looked dangerous. That was the problem. When the police arrived, he was already there, standing quietly among the neighbors, hands in his pockets, eyes lowered not from guilt but from patience. No one moved away from him. No one whispered his name. Because in a city like this, killers were supposed to come from outside, and he belonged here. He arrived when the crowd had already formed. Daniel stood a few steps behind the police tape, close enough to see the outline under the sheet, far enough not to be questioned. The red and blue lights washed over his face, changing it every second, calm, concerned, almost gentle. Someone nearby whispered, "She was such a quiet woman." Daniel nodded, even though no one was speaking to him directly. Quiet people were always the easiest. The police spoke in low voices, careful not to panic the neighborhood. No signs of forced entry, no obvious struggle, no immediate suspect. Words chosen to reassure, not to explain. Daniel listened to every syllable. He always did. He had learned long ago that people revealed more when they believed they were safe, when they believed they were being heard. And Daniel had spent his entire life making people feel exactly that way. He lived in the same apartment for years, paid rent early, kept his windows clean. Neighbors described him with the same words over and over again: nice, helpful, quiet. A man who blended so perfectly into the background that no one could remember when they first met him. That was intentional. As a child, Daniel had learned that being noticed meant being vulnerable. Silence protected him.
You have to listen to me.
Observation empowered him.
We don't have much time.
He watched how people reacted, what made them uncomfortable, what made them trust. By the time he grew older, it wasn't something he thought about anymore. It was automatic. When the city slept, Daniel listened. The first victim had opened her door willingly. That much was obvious to him even before the police confirmed it. She had known the voice on the other side, trusted it, believed it belonged to someone safe. She had been wrong. Daniel did not feel guilt. Guilt was loud and chaotic. What he felt was something closer to balance, a quiet sense that something unfinished had finally been completed. The next morning, the city woke up uneasy. Doors locked more carefully, conversations lowered, people looked at strangers longer than usual. But Daniel was not a stranger. He was familiar, and familiarity was comforting. He offered help where he could, asked if anyone needed anything, listened as fear poured out of people who didn't even realize they were confessing their anxieties to him. Every word was stored away. The police worked quickly but not deeply. They searched for an outsider, someone passing through, someone without roots. It made sense. The alternative was unthinkable. Daniel understood that instinct well. People preferred monsters they didn't recognize. Days passed. The tension remained, but it dulled. Routine returned, and with routine came carelessness. The second body was found in a different part of the city. Younger, stronger. This time there were marks not enough to look brutal, but enough to suggest intention and something else, something small that the killer hadn't meant to leave behind. A detail connected to Daniel. Not obvious, not yet, but real. A witness came forward, not confidently, not immediately, just a man who couldn't sleep after seeing someone late at night, walking away from a place he shouldn't have been. He didn't see a face clearly, just a posture. A voice when he was spoken to, calm, familiar. Too familiar. The witness doubted himself, because accusing a stranger was easy. Accusing someone you recognized was dangerous. Daniel sensed the shift before anyone said a word. He noticed how questions changed tone, how eyes lingered longer, how the air felt tighter around him. And for the first time, he felt something new. Not fear, anticipation. That night, he stood by his window and watched the city he had lived in for so long. The city that trusted him. The city that had looked the other way because it was easier than looking close. They were getting closer now, and Daniel smiled, because closeness had never scared him. It was where he did his best work. Chastina 2, Persia Saria, he woke before dawn again. Not from noise, not from fear, from awareness. The city was changing its rhythm. Patrol cars moved slower now, as if the streets themselves were listening. People avoided eye contact longer than necessary, then stared too long once they committed to it. Trust was no longer automatic. It had become selective. Daniel noticed everything. The second victim was no longer described as an incident. The word wasn't said aloud, but it lived in every conversation pattern. The police denied it publicly, yet their behavior betrayed them. More questions, fewer smiles, longer pauses after answers. Daniel did not withdraw. He knew disappearance created suspicion. Anxiety attracted attention. So he remained exactly who he had always been: helpful, calm, present.
You have to listen to me.
When an
This is
officer
crucial.
questioned him
We
for the
don't
first
have much
time,
time.
Daniel answered without hesitation. Did you know either of the victims? Only by sight. It was true. And it wasn't. He knew their voices when they felt safe. He knew the way they filled silence when they believed they were being heard. He knew which words they softened and which they avoided altogether. The officer thanked him and stepped away. But before leaving, he looked back, just once, just long enough. That was enough. Daniel understood then someone was looking closer. The witness finally spoke again. Not a name, not a description, just a sentence that shifted the room. He sounded kind. The words lingered because evil wasn't supposed to sound kind. It wasn't supposed to feel familiar, and yet sometimes it did. That night, Daniel adjusted his plan. He didn't abandon it, he refined it. He had always been good at adapting. The world rarely behaved as expected, and that had never bothered him. The third could be a mistake, or a statement. He chose the statement. But the city moved faster than he anticipated. A camera, old, poorly angled, overlooked for years. Not enough to show a face, not enough for certainty, but enough to capture a silhouette, a posture, a walk. Recognizable. When they came the second time, Daniel was ready. He didn't act surprised. He didn't protest. He invited them inside. And the moment they stepped in, one of the detectives felt it, the silence. Not the empty silence of loneliness, but something older, settled, as if it belonged there. Questions followed. Daniel answered every one of them, calmly, clearly, almost perfectly. Too perfectly. Then they noticed it. Something small, something that didn't belong, not proof, not yet, but wrong. Daniel said nothing. And for the first time, he didn't smile. When the door closed behind them, he stood alone in the middle of the room. The control he had carried for so long felt thinner now, stretched tight. The city was no longer blind. And Daniel knew if they came back one more time, it wouldn't be to ask questions. He didn't need to. Everything was already where it belonged. He sat in the dark, listening to the faint hum of the city outside. Somewhere a siren wailed and then faded. Somewhere else a door slammed shut a little too hard. Fear had a sound now. Daniel could hear it everywhere. He replayed the detective's visit in his mind, their questions, their eyes. The way one of them hesitated before stepping fully into the room, as if his instincts had whispered something his logic refused to hear. They hadn't accused him. Not yet, but accusation was coming. Daniel felt it the way a storm is felt long before the rain, pressure building, air growing heavy. The mistake hadn't been emotional. It never was. It had been practical. He had assumed the city would stay slow. He'd been wrong. By morning, rumors were everywhere. A man questioned twice. A familiar face seen near the second crime scene. Nothing confirmed, nothing solid. Just enough uncertainty to rock trust inside. Daniel walked through it all calmly, He greeted neighbors, held doors open, smiled when appropriate. People smiled back, but not the same way. Their eyes searched his face now, looking for something they couldn't define. That amused him, because they still didn't see him. They were only beginning to sense the shape of him. The call came in the afternoon.
You have
Another
to
body.
listen to me. This is
one was
crucial. We
different.
don't have much time.
The victim hadn't been chosen for convenience or silence. This time the choice was deliberate and personal, the kind of choice that ended debates. Daniel arrived at the scene before the police finished sealing it. He stood farther back than before. He didn't need to hear details, he already knew them. The body told a story, and the story pointed inward. The detective from before noticed him immediately. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Nothing passed between them, no challenge, no fear, just recognition. Not of guilt, of intelligence. Later that night, they came back, not with questions this time, with purpose. They searched slowly, carefully, every drawer, every shelf, every quiet corner Daniel had curated over years of being invisible. And then they found it, the thing he had kept. Not as a trophy, he didn't believe in those, but as proof. Proof to himself that what he did was real, that the control was earned. The room went still. No one spoke. Daniel looked at the object, then at the detective. His face didn't change, his pulse didn't spike, but something inside him shifted. Not panic, acceptance. They didn't arrest him that night. They didn't have to. When they left, Daniel knew the story no longer belonged to him. He stood alone again, surrounded by silence that no longer felt obedient. Outside, the city breathed uneasily, as if it had finally realized something poisonous had been living in its lungs. Daniel walked to the window and looked out at the streets he had memorized so well. They trusted him once. They never would again. And as the first light of morning crept in, Daniel understood something clearly, calmly, and without regret. This wasn't the end. It was the moment everything truly began.